Hey, the music was so good today. I came to both services. Okay, it was so good. I don't know if you could see in the back, but the people who were up here, they were young leading today. And so Josiah, I believe Josiah's 12 or 13. He helped sing a song. Abigail, she's my daughter's age, so she's 11, I believe. And Will is 15, right? And they were up here. Actually, everybody on this stage was younger than me today, which is so inspiring, isn't it? And it makes me feel old, all right? And everybody's oh, I'm worried about the next generation. Listen, we're going to be fine. It's funny. It's always the Woodstock generation saying, we're worried about the next generation. No, they're going to be good. And during music, I look back, and Jasmine, I don't mean to call you out, but Jasmine's worshiping. Jasmine 18, 19, somewhere in that range. Yeah, so it's awesome. I'm so excited. Anyway, some of you, this is your first time at church, or maybe your second time in church. If you're here last weekend, you didn't see me, you saw Pastor Nate, who crushed it, by the way. So thankful for Nate. He put that message together with a 3-week-old baby at home. That is amazing right there. But if you are new here, my name is Joel. I'm the normal guy on the stage, and you have to put up with me for every Sunday for the rest of the year. So I'm sorry in advance. All right, well, Al likes it. That's good. But if you are a first-timer, I would love to meet you after my talk. I'm always out in the lobby, and I would love to just say hi to you. And if you didn't get to turn in that welcome home card on the back of your seats with the giving, if you're a first-timer, bring it back to me. I got some gifts for you, and I'm thankful that you are here. I'm also thankful for those of you who are online, and we have people who watch through different platforms. They watch or they listen. So if you're watching, it's Facebook or YouTube. But my first personal favorite is to listen on Spotify, because everybody tells me I have a face for radio. And so I love our online family. So can we make some noise for everybody watching or listening online right now? You guys are amazing. By the way, if you are a first-timer, your timing is sort of amazing for 2 reasons. Number one, we're having a welcome lunch today. It's actually right after this service. It's the biggest one we've ever had, okay? We're not even able to do it in the back room like we normally do. It's in here, but you're still invited. I think we're getting as much for whatever first-timer or second-timer wants to come, so that's awesome. The second thing about your timing that's good is we're starting this brand new series today. 2-week series called Exodus, based on a book in the Bible called 1030. You're above average, okay? You're above average people. Before we talk about the book of Exodus, just something a little lighter, I got a question for you. Who here in the room, you are old enough to remember this old video game we'll put up on the screen? Who remembers Pong? Let me see your hand. Do you remember Pong? Yeah, you do. Listen, if you're younger or in the room, this game is from the 1900s. And listen, in the 1900s, we all had 3 things, okay? Perms, men and ladies, okay? Patrick Mahomes is trying to bring it back today, but still, perms, people drank Tang, and you played Pong. And I remember Pong was the first video game I ever played. I played it on a tube TV with the rabbit ears, and it had the dial on the side that took your body weight to turn, click, click, click. But the first video game I fell in love with was not Pong. It was actually this video game, Super Mario Kart. All right, who here, you played this game in your house? You got to play this at home in your comfort of your own home? Oh, must have been nice. Must have been nice. Listen, I grew up, my parents are, my dad's a preacher, I'm a PK, and so in our house, the only thing that was allowed on our TV was the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie. Everything else was considered filth, which is why I strategically made friends with kids whose parents were heathens, who let them play Mario Kart in their house, and then I would strategically invite myself over to their house to play Super Mario Kart. And so I remember I used to go to my friend's house, Matt and Jair Taylor, to play video games, all right? But there was one little problem when I would go there. They were allowed to play Mario Kart 23 hours a day. There was no rules over there, okay? They were living the dream. I'm over here watching the Waltons with my mother. They're able to eat candy bars for breakfast. And so I remember I invited myself over to their house, and they always would crush me at Mario Kart because that's all they did was play Mario Kart all day long. And so I remember this one particular time I was playing, and we were playing multiplayer. So it was like a split screen, and so there's like a top screen and the bottom half, and so you each are, in different places. And so I was on the top screen, and I don't remember if I was playing Matt or Jerry. I was playing one of them. I was probably having a breakfast Snickers because you could do whatever you want over there. And so I'll never forget that game because out of the gate, I started winning. And I had never been winning. And so I stood up, and I was like, a whole body was into it, and I was like doing spin moves and hops, and like, I was way into this game. And at the bottom of my screen, the top, half of the screen, and then the bottom corner of my screen, it said first place. I'm like, this is the greatest day of my life. Okay, I was so excited, and I crossed the finish line, and I threw down my controller, and I'm like, how about them apples? And I started doing the moonwalk, because that's what you did in 1992. And Matt and Jerry were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm celebrating because I finally beat you turkeys in Mario Kart. And they're like, no, you didn't win. You lost. I'm like, no, look at my screen. They said, you're not the guy on the top. Your screen is the bottom screen. And I looked at the bottom screen, which is apparently my screen. And listen, the person at the bottom screen, which is apparently me, was just running into a wall in a corner. The whole race, everybody was passing me, and the whole race I was just like, huh. And now I know some of you are like, well, this is great, but what's Mario Kart got to do with me and Jesus? And I heard a rumor you all are giving out Nintendo Switches with Mario Kart, the first-time guests afterwards. That's not true. All right, we're in a building program right now, so we can't afford that. But by the way, on December 15th, we are going to show you guys the new building. All right, December 15th, video, pictures, the whole thing, so don't skip that Sunday. But that's not the point of the Mario Kart story. The point of the Mario Kart story is I think sometimes our faith journey can look a lot like that game of Mario Kart. We feel like we are finally winning spiritually, and then, bam, we run into the same old wall. We struggle with the same old habit, the same old setback, and everybody feels like they're passing us, and we're just stuck going in the wall, huh? Does anybody ever feel like this? Is it just me? Anybody ever feel like you're just running into the same old thing over and over and over again? It happens to all of us, and sometimes we think I was finally winning at beating that habit in my life. I was finally winning. Or I was finally winning at getting past my past. Or I thought I was finally winning at getting over my road rage. But then my boss had to give me a job out on Route 24. Come on, everybody ever have a little road rage on Route 24? Who's ever sinned a little bit on Route 24? Anybody at all? And so sometimes our faith journey can look like Mario Kart, where we just keep running in the same wall over and over and over again. One of these Sundays, you're going to see me come to church with a GoPro mounted to my head. Because I want you guys to see what, pastor vision. I want you to see what I see from my perspective. Because this literally happens every single Sunday. We're open 51 weeks a year, all right? We take 1 week off after Christmas, but we're open 51 weeks a year. This happens every single Sunday, all right? I go out there, and I like to welcome you guys on the stairs out there. And without fail, I'll see somebody who maybe you haven't been to church for a while, and you'll see me on the stairs, and you'll be like, I didn't know you were going to be here, Pastor. And you're like, listen, I can explain. All right, I can explain why I haven't been here. You know how I was doing good with that one thing? Well, I kind of fell off the wagon a bit, but I'm back. Or somebody who's listen, I know me and the Hubster, remember we were doing good, but then I started throwing frying pans back at his head again, and I hit him a few times, and and when you guys see me, everybody looks it's like confession zone. Everybody feels guilty. I'm just trying to say, hey, welcome to church. I'm glad you're here, but it's like the Catholic confessional out there. I'm the guilt triggerer, I feel like, and you don't need to do that. I'm just glad you're here. But I get it, because I know for a lot of us, we just feel like we're not winning spiritually because we keep on hitting the same old wall over and over and over again, which is why I'm calling today's message, and we'll put this on the screen, I'm finally free from blank. Whatever is your blank, okay? And I don't know who this is for, but for somebody in the room, you are going to find freedom from whatever your blank is today. It's closer than you think. Your freedom over whatever your struggle is, your hurt, your habit, your hang-up, it is closer than you think. And I mean that literally, that it's closer than you think. Because let me show you what 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 says. It says, for the Lord is the Spirit. And wherever, everybody say wherever. Wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is, what is their church? Freedom. Okay, listen, the good news is this is why some of you all are here, because you are going to find your freedom from whatever it is that is in your blank, in this room. Your freedom is here. It's here. Because wherever the Lord is, there is what? Freedom. And so don't give up. Now, if I'm you, I'm like, okay, Joel, that's cool. Okay, great. This series is called Exodus. You're in the Corinthians, brother. And so let's get to Exodus real quick. Exodus is the greatest freedom story in the Bible. And just let me give you like the tippy top summary version of Exodus. The Israelites have been in slavery for 430 years. 430, like you thought you were stuck for a while, run into a wall for a while. Can you imagine 430 years? And so they didn't think freedom was possible. But in the book of Exodus, we learned some things about freedom from the Israelites. And so I just want to give you three of those today. And so the first one we'll put on the screen is this. Freedom is found when we move from denial to we need help. Now, everybody say denial. Now, you know what denial makes me think of? It makes me think of potty training my kids. And anybody in potty training phase right now, like who's in that stage of life? Okay, everybody who's raising their hand, they look so glum. They're like, or they're tired. Look, we're going to have counselors out in the lobby after the service so that you can get some counseling if you're potty training your kids. Potty training your kids is so hard, isn't it? Like, I think of my life in just two stages. That's it, just two stages. Okay, before potty training, stage one. And then, how did poo get on my shoulder that's not related to me? Because, when I was potty training my kids, I found stuff everywhere in my house. Like, I never knew I was going to deal with so much stuff as when I started potty training my kids. And here's a picture of my kids. We'll throw up on a screen. Yeah, some of you are saying, oh, I wish you could smell this picture. Because, yes, they are cute in this picture, but this is in their potty training, stage right here. And here's what always happened in our house. I would be like, okay, kids, you got to use the bathroom? And they'd be like, nope. No, I don't have to go. I'm like, come on, you just drank 17 bottles of water. I know you got to tinkle a little bit. And I think there's a little water leaking out of your ear. You probably got to go. And they're like, nope, I don't have to go at all. And so I'll never forget, by the way, parents, can you relate to that? Nope, I don't got to go. And so I remember one night, I had to give the kids a bath after dinner. And I'm not going to tell you which kid this story is about. And you'll see why in a second, okay? So, before they took a bath, I was like, why don't you use the bathroom first? And they were like, nope, I don't have to go at all. I'm like, yeah, but we had your mom's chili tonight. And so I think you got to go. And they're like, no, I promise, I don't have to go at all. And I made a rookie parenting mistake. Parents, you feel me? You ever made a rookie parenting mistake? I decided, okay, I'll just give this kid a bath. They say they don't have to go, even though they're acting weird, maybe, whatever, I don't know. And I don't even think that child's behind had hit the water yet. And what happened next, I cannot say in this room without you leaving this church. The next hour of my life was the worst hour my life has ever gone through. And this is not a lot. I never took a bath in that bathtub ever again. We sold the house. I never took a bath in that bathtub. And I tell you that because I think the biggest problem with potty training is denial. And I don't think we really grow out of that. I think the biggest struggle with us getting past a hurt, habit, or hang-up is denial. And I think the biggest thing holding me and you and all of us back spiritually is that we are denying the very things that we should be addressing in our lives. Now, I don't say that as a judgment kind of thing. I am a fellow struggler. Hello. I can deny with the best of them because think about it. Isn't it so easy to be like, oh, I don't deal with anger towards that person. I mean, I might be a little angry towards that person, but did you know what they did to me? It is justified. Hey, why don't you sit down? We'll grab coffee. I'll tell you all about it. Or it's I know you think I struggle with that thing, but I don't struggle with that thing. And everybody around you is like, okay, buckaroo. And listen, I get it. Denial is what we all do, but denial is how we get, back to potty training, how we get doo-doo all over us. And so the question is, what do we do? Well, what did the Israelites do? After being stuck for 430 years. Well, let's check this out. Exodus chapter 2, starting verse 23. It says, years passed, okay? So they've been in captivity for 430 years, and the king of Egypt died. But the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. And so what'd they do? All right, you seem really sleepy, and I think it's maybe a little warm in this room, so we created the environment, okay? But let's say this part again. What did they do? They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. So everybody yell, help. Okay, now, it's just for the men in the room, because this is a word like we don't like to say. Guys, all right, so ladies, you just take a little breather. Men, let's all say help. Help. A little lower. Help. A little higher. Help. Listen, I don't think we know how powerful that four-letter word help is. There's just a little small startup organization that you probably never heard of it. I think it's called like Alcoholics Anonymous or something, or AA. I don't know. Anybody ever heard of that before? Okay, AA, their first step of AA is to say, help, I admit that I am powerless over alcohol and my life has become unmanageable. And their very first step is to say, hey, I admit it. And like, I know they're like a small startup, but like, I think like 2 million people in the world go to AA, and it's in now over 180 countries, which is amazing. And the very first thing they do is say, help. And I think that may be the key to getting past anything in our life. It's just to say, hey, this thing has gotten out of control in my life. I admit this thing is out of control in my life. Because after the Israelites yell help, here's the very next thing after they yell help. And I just want to give you a heads up. This is so good. You all look like, you're like, okay, what's going on today? Listen, you can't make this up. After they yell help, God heard their groaning. And he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then he looked down on the people of Israel and knew it was time to act. Okay, I'm going to come off this stage right now. This is so exciting. When we go from denial to, hey, I need help, we'll put this on the screen. Here's what happens. God hears you. And God remembers his promises to you. And he sees you, and now he knows, hey, it is now my time to act. God hears you, he remembers his promises, he knows, he sees you, and he knows it is his time to act. That's what happened when the Israelites moved from denial to, hey, I need help. And so when we're like, God, help, I am not over this breakup. Or God, help, I'm not over this person who died. I'm still struggling with their death. Or God, help, I am not over what happened to me as a kid. Or God, help, I just can't seem to get past this struggle that just keeps coming up and over and over and over again. Good news is, God hears you. God remembers his promises to you. God sees you and knows now it is my time to act for you. That's what happens when we move from denial to help. And so here's the second thing. We build on this freedom thing in the story of Exodus. Freedom is found. The second thing is when we believe our God is bigger than our biggest struggle. Now, hi, my name is Joel, and I'm a control freak. Thank you. Listen, I have this like little life motto. You know that song, like, every little thing's gonna be all right. You know that song? If I were to write it, I would say, everything gonna be all right as long as I can control it. That's how I would make that. I would rewrite it for Bob Marley. Because like I love to control things. Any control freaks in the room? Let me see your hands. If you are a control freak a little bit. Okay, if the person next to you raised your hand for you, they is a control freak, right? One of my favorite pastors said this, and I always wrote this down when I heard him say it. He said, the thing you try to control the most is probably the area of your life you trust God the least. This was one of my favorite pastors, but sometimes when you hear stuff that's so good it makes you feel convicted. I'm like, nah, I don't like this guy anymore. But question, what would happen if the thing that you try to control the most in your life, what if you just gave that to God? Like right now, today, what if you just gave that thing to God? Like, God, I'm going to give you my mental health stuff. Or God, I'm going to give you this bitterness that I've been having against this person forever. God, I'm just going to give you that. Or God, I'm just going to give you this stupid habit I just keep on falling into over and over and over again. Okay, what would happen if you were to just give that to God? Here's what I think would happen. I think you would take one giant step forward towards freedom. Does anybody want to believe that? Anybody at all want to kind of believe that? All the control freaks in the room are like, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I want to hold on to something. So let's go back to the Israelites. The Israelites they yell help. God hears them. He remembers. He makes his promises to them. And so the next thing that happens in Exodus chapter 2 is there's this guy who shows up in the story, and he's kind of like an obscure Bible character. No one's probably ever heard of him. He's like a footnote kind of guy. His name is Moses. Yeah, have you heard of Moses? Have you heard of Charlton Heston? Different guy, but same character. Okay, so... And Moses, when he shows up in Exodus chapter 2, at this point in the story, Moses is old. Okay, like old. He's 80 years old. Some of you are like, I'm 82. Well, you're not old, but Moses is old. And Moses was still working as a shepherd. He was rocking, his Birkenstocks. He was drinking Metamucil while he was walking around with his shepherd. And so one day he's out in the wilderness walking around, drinking his Metamucil, and Moses sees something. And he's like, I don't think my 80-year-old eyes are working right, because he sees a bush that's burning, but it ain't burning. And so he's like, wicca, wicca, wicca. I don't think I'm seeing this right. Like, what am I seeing? And so that's where we pick up in Exodus chapter 2, starting in verse 20. Exodus chapter 3, starting in verse 4. It says, when the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush. Imagine this. Moses, Moses. Here I am, Moses replied. Do not come any closer, the Lord warned. Take off your Birkenstock sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. Now, my man Moses is talking to a talking bush. Just imagine, I'm thinking, Moses, did you drink some bad Metamucil? What is going on? And he's talking to this burning bush, and basically the bush, who's God, but Moses doesn't know that yet, okay? The bush is like, listen, Moses, you are going to be the one who leads my people to freedom. And Moses is like, I'm 80. Bush? The only thing I should be leading is the geriatric club. I'll lead a group on how to take care of your Birkenstock sandal. I can't be leading an entire people group to freedom. And so This is kind of a takeaway in this story. God always sees our biggest obstacles as his biggest opportunity. And so God sees an 80-year-old convicted murderer. Hello, I didn't tell you that part of the story. Yeah, Moses is a convicted murderer. He's a fugitive. He's out on the run. He actually did it. Okay, he was guilty. And God's like, 80-year-old convicted murderer, you're my guy. I'm not done with you yet. 80-year-old convicted murderer. Now, Moses, if I'm him, I'm using my 80-year-old ears to say, okay, I don't think I heard this right. It kind of reminds me of cell phones, which I know if you're younger in the room, you don't call them cell phones, and you use different words. You say things like sus and riz and, boomer, all right? But listen, anybody who was born in the 1900s, we say cell phones a lot of times because in the 1900s, we didn't have an iPhone. We had cell phones. Remember just cell phones? You used to use them to call your friends on their beeper. Remember that? Or if you had a fancy cell phone back in the day, you could play the game Snake on it. Anybody having a snake flashback? But nowadays, phones they can do anything. It blows my mind. Now, in our house, for years, my wife, she's been telling me that I can't hear very well. Apparently, watching TV on volume level 80 is not normal. And our neighbors may call the cops for a noise violation, okay? And so forever, the last few years, Stacy's been like, Joel, you can't hear. I'm like, wait, there's a deer? Where? She's like, no, you need hearing aids. I'm like, you have the ace of spades? We're not even playing cards. These are actual examples. I can't hear anything. But Apple came out with an update, a software update a couple weeks ago. And you can now take a hearing test on your iPhone through Apple Health using AirPods. And you can test your hearing on your couch. What an amazing time to be alive, people. And so I was like, okay, I'll sit on my couch and take a hearing test. And I ended up taking it 5 times because I didn't like the results. And this is true. The results are in. I have 39% hearing loss. And I'm like, I wish Stacy would have told me that instead of talking about the ace of spades all the time. But it's amazing that our phones can now check our hearing. Now, here's what's not amazing. I think there's one aspect of our phone that's the exact same since the very first phone I ever had, is that your calls drop and sometimes you can't hear the person you're talking to. Anybody in the last 6 months ever had a call drop or had not sure what the other person on the line was saying? Let me just raise your hands if that's happened to you. Yeah, and if you're way old, you remember this commercial back in the day when they would say, "Can you hear me now?" Listen, that commercial is as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And back to the story of Exodus, if God said to me, "Hey, you're going to be the person who's going to lead the people out of freedom," I'd be like, I can't hear you, Lord. I don't know what you're saying. And God's like, "Listen, you are my guy." And Moses is like, "I can't hear you." And God's like, Moses, you're my guy. Can you hear me now? Now, Moses, again, I already told you this, he doesn't know who he's talking to. And so he's like, "Mr. Bush, who are you?" And so look at this. This is in verse 14. God replied to Moses, "I am who I am." Now, if I'm Moses, I'm like, well, that doesn't help at all. Like, is my Metamucil for real that bad? I'm like, what is happening that you're like, this is not a name. But God's like, listen, everything you need to know about me, it's right here. And so Moses is like, who's going to choose an 80-year-old guy to lead a whole Israel nation into freedom? And God's like, I am. And Moses is like, okay, well, who's going to help this guy? Because like, I can't do this all by myself. And God's like, I'm going to help. I am. And who's going to help you get past the biggest struggle that you just can't seem to beat? God's like, I am. I am. Because I am. I wrote this down this week. Who's going to free you from addiction? I am. Just imagine God saying, I am. Who's going to free you from anger? I am. Who's going to free you from bitterness? I am. Who's going to free you from bad relationship habits? I am. Who's going to free you from depression? I am. Who's going to free you from loneliness? I am. Who's going to free you from unforgiveness? I am, because I am who I am. And so God's like, I am your rescuer. I am your restorer. I am your forgiver. I am your salvation. I am your hope. I am your freedom. I am the first and the last. I am powerful. I am for you. I am joy, peace, love, life. I am with you because I am who I am. And I think God's like, can you hear me now? I'm going to amen myself. Thank you for the two people who clapped during that. Like, God is like, I am who I am. And because his nickname is I am who I am, we can get past the biggest struggles that we have in life. And if you're like, who's going to help me? God's like, I am. I am. Aren't you thankful that he is the great I am? The name makes no sense until it makes complete sense. And so then the third thing we find in this Exodus story is freedom is found when we release our grip on what's got a grip on us. Now, back to Moses. All right, Moses is standing there, and God's like, you're going to be the guy I'm going to use to release the people into freedom. You're going to release them from slavery. And Moses is like, I think I'm the victim of identity theft. Like, I think I'm the wrong guy for this. And God's like, okay, Moses, what is that you're gripping in your hand right now? Now, if you remember, Moses was a shepherd, right? He was a shepherd. So what would Moses have been holding there in front of that burning bush? A staff. And so would that staff have represented a lot of Moses' identity, that he was a shepherd? Would that staff have been his identity in a lot of ways? Yes or no? Yes. Now, the thing is, we all have different things that we identify with. Like some of you would say, hey, my identity is I'm a stay-at-home mama. Or some of you, your identity is I'm a small business owner. Some of you, your identity is you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And we are not friends today. The Ravens play the Steelers. You're a Steelers fan? All right, listen. Ravens play the Steelers today at 1. And so, deal. We'll make a deal. If you guys win, let's not talk about it next Sunday. If we win, we talk all about it. That doesn't work? No. But identifying as a stay-at-home mom or a small business owner or a football team, whatever, that's all good. But I think a lot of times we identify with the thing that we struggle the most with. Like we let the thing that has a grip on us be our identity. And I just came to church today to tell you your identity isn't addict. Your identity isn't depression. Your identity isn't divorced. Your identity isn't the person whose kid went off the rails. Your identity isn't this or that. And yes, those things may be a struggle for you. They may have some sort of grip on your life, but that is not who you are. And so back to the story with Moses, he's got his grip on this staff, and God's like, I want you to release your grip on that staff in front of Moses. And I feel like this is what God is communicating to Moses. This is so big. I think he's saying to Moses, hey, I want you to release your grip on what's got a grip on you, and you watch what I do. That's a nugget right there. When you release your grip on what has a grip on you, God's like, watch out. Watch what I do. And so one day, Moses is standing in front of Pharaoh, and he's got his grip on what? His staff, his identity. And God's like, I want you to let go of your identity. I want you to let go of that staff. So Moses does. And voila, the staff turns into who knows what? A snake, which is a part of the story. I'm like, okay, God, I'm out. Like, I don't do snakes. I remember when Stacy and I first got married, me and my brother, we went halvesies on a lawnmower together. I don't know if you remember during the money series, I told you, me and Stacy, we had no money. And so we had to buy the cheapest lawnmower together with my brother. So we went 50-50. And when you have to get a co-signer for the cheapest riding lawnmower at Lowe's, you might be a redneck. So we were totally in that redneck stage of life. And so we went halvesies on this lawnmower. And so one day, I had 50% lawnmower, pride. And so I was like, I'm going to go sit on my lawnmower out in my garage. And so I sat on my lawnmower. This is no lie. Partially lie. A 973-foot snake came out from under the hood of that lawnmower. And here's actual footage of me in the garage. That wasn't Marv from Home Alone. That was me in the garage. I screamed so loud, and Stacy does not have hearing problems, so Stacy ran out into the garage, and she's like, what is it? And I'm like, you know that movie Snakes on a Plane? Well, there's snakes on a pasture out here, and I'm like throwing my arms, and at this point, the snake had disappeared, so Stacy's like, well, where's the snake? I'm like, I don't know. I think it went back under the lawnmower, and she's like, well, why didn't you grab it? And I'm like, why don't you grab it? I'm not grabbing it. I do not grab snakes. So I think I called Tim and said, hey, why don't you come take a ride on your lawnmower, see what happens. You deal with this snake. But I have this phobia of snakes. But in this story, Moses, he puts his staff down. And it turns into a snake. And then God's like, I want you to pick up your staff. That was a staff. Now it's a snake. I want you to pick that up. And I already told you, at this point in the story, I'm like, God, this is elder abuse. I'm not doing this. But 80-year-old Moses got down on his knee. And he grabbed that snake, and it turned back into a staff. But here's what's interesting about that staff, and we'll put this on the screen. Up until that moment in the book of Exodus, that staff is always referred to as the staff of Moses. But from this moment on, the staff is always referred to as the staff of the Lord. For the rest of the book, it has an entirely different name. He let go of what had his identity, what his identity was in, which is this staff. Hey, I'm a shepherd. And he let go of that. And that staff completely changed when he gave up his identity in that thing. And he gave his identity to God because that staff helped part the Red Sea. That staff led the entire Israelite people out of slavery and into freedom. And that staff inspired an entire generation that God can do anything. Because when you release your grip on what has a grip on you, you watch what God can do. I have this kind of a weird thing that I do, but it's a thing I actually do. When I'm struggling with something, when there's something that is scaring me in life, or I just don't know what to do in life, or I just can't beat a certain thing, I literally will just open my hands like this. And I'll say, God, I give this to you. I can't control it, and God, I'm letting go of it, and I'm giving it to you. And so when my kids are freaking me out, I'm like, God, I give you those little sinners. I'm like, God, take them. When leading this campus is scaring me to death, which happens, I'm like, God, I just give these crazy church people to you, who I love so much. When I'm struggling with my own hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and I know people don't think the pastor struggles with those stuff. Yeah. I open my hands and I'm like, God, just take it. I release it to you. And so I don't know if you're comfortable, but if you're comfortable, would you just lift out your hands in front of you and just open your hands? And just say this out loud to me, with me. Dear God, I'm releasing my grip on what has a grip on me. I believe you're bigger than my biggest struggle. Will you help me? Now I want you to hear God saying, I am going to help you. I am. Because I am. I am going to help you because I am the great I am. Aren't you thankful for that? Aren't you thankful for that? Now, being inspired by a message on a Sunday is great. But if you really want to have freedom over stuff in your life, you need more than a message on Sunday, which is why I just want to end by telling you about a program we have at our church that I am so proud of called Celebrate Recovery. And I don't want to out the Celebrate Recovery people who are in the room, but they're in the room and we keep them anonymous, but the people in this group are just so amazing, and I couldn't be more proud of a program that we offer than Celebrate Recovery. Now, Celebrate Recovery meets right in this room every Thursday night at 6:30, and it has an identity crisis. Everybody thinks like Celebrate Recovery is for just recovery only, okay? Addiction recovery only. Celebrate Recovery is for any hurt, habit, or hang-up. And so if you're struggling with depression, which, by the way, I've been there, Celebrate Recovery is a place for you. If you're struggling with loneliness, hey, come meet your people at Celebrate Recovery. You're struggling with grief, Celebrate Recovery. It's for anything. And so it's how you take this message to the next level. But I want to end today where we started, because I want you to know that Celebrate Recovery meets in this room. Your freedom of whatever that thing is you're struggling with can happen in this room. And it's not because this room is powerful. Here's why it is, and this is the first verse we started with today. I want us to read this out loud together on 3. 1, 2, 3. For the Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. That was pretty good, but we're going to do better. Let's read that again on 3. 1, 2, 3. For the Lord is the Spirit, and wherever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And freedom can happen here because Jesus and His Spirit is here. Now, we always end every message at Bay Shore by just reminding you that if you have never crossed the line of faith to say, hey, I want this freedom. I want this one who has freed me from sin, who has freed me from my hurts, my habits, and hang-ups. Jesus is that one. And you can cross the line of faith here any Sunday that you're here. And here's what's crazy about the freedom that we get through Jesus. You can live your life going off the rails your whole life, and you can walk in here one Sunday, like today, and you say a prayer, and you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and you'll be free from your sin, and you'll have forgiveness, and you will spend eternity in heaven with Jesus. And you might say, well, that's not fair. It's not fair. It's grace. It's the greatest gift that Jesus ever offered us. And so if you guys would just bow your heads, if you've never crossed that line of faith to say yes to Jesus, I want to be free from my sin and I want to follow you so you can lead me into freedom. It doesn't mean my life is going to be perfect, but it means I have someone to go to when things are off. If you just want to accept Jesus today, just raise your hand when no one's looking around. The Bible says that if we confess with our mouth in front of people, then God will promote us or take us into heaven with Him in front of His Father one day. I saw that hand. I see this hand. I see His hands. All right, let's just say this out loud together. If you just raise your hand, say this out loud. If you are already a Jesus follower, let's say this with the folks who just raise their hand. Dear Jesus, I believe that you're the Son of God and that I'm a sinner. But you went on a cross and died for my sins. And you walked out of a grave alive for my forgiveness. I receive that forgiveness today. And I release my grip on my life. And I give my life to you, Jesus. In Jesus' name. And everybody said amen, amen, amen. Let's put our hands together for the three of you who made that decision. That's amazing.